Our reading today is from Psalm 46. To the leader of the Korahites, according to Alamoth, a song. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. Selah. There is a river, whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of the city, it shall not be moved. God will help it when the morning dawns. The nations are in an uproar, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. Come behold the works of the Lord. See what desolations he's brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations. I am exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. I want to talk about confidence in chaos, having some confidence in chaos. Psalm 46 invites us into a world that is literally shaking apart at the seams. The mountains are sliding into the sea, the nations are raging, the kingdoms are tottering. But the psalmist doesn't respond with panic, accusation, despair. There's a surprising turn at the very first verse. God is our refuge and strength. The psalm doesn't deny the experience of chaos and catastrophe. It's a declaration that chaos and catastrophe doesn't have the final word. We find this is true even in the opening lines of Scripture. God has been the one who brings order out of the formless deep, who speaks light into darkness, who sets boundaries for the waters. Psalm 46 draws upon that same theology and imagery in the Genesis account of creation that speaks to the trembling moments in our own lives. This is a psalm for anybody that's standing in those shaking places, right? Discovering again that confidence doesn't necessarily come from having stability in the world, but from the God who rules above it. The psalm was penned by the sons of Korah. They were appointed by King David to lead worship in the temple. And they were from the family of Kohath. They were descendants of Levi. And this is a psalm of praise and thanksgiving. And in Psalm 46, as we've learned, they singing of their confidence and trust in God, even when and if the world that they live in is falling apart at the seams. Of course, the language is figurative. This is poetry. It's very dramatic. It's intended to evoke a certain emotion in us, confidence and things like that. This is a very robust psalm, and it was written during a time of crisis. And the whole point of the psalm seems to be to encourage hope and confidence in God during a crisis. And the psalm actually begins where I started it today, to the chief musician for the sons of Korah, a song upon Alamoth. Alamoth is the pitch of the song. And namely, it is that of the leading female soprano voice. The psalmist is trying to draw our attention. They want us to realize that you should be paying attention to that lead voice in the song because it's taking you somewhere. It's the lead voice in the drama here. And since the title refers to the pitch, we can pretty safely assume that the psalmist really wants the listener to hone in and pay attention to the lead. And to hear this overarching theme in the song that God is with us. When the nations are raging and the world is falling apart, the Lord of hosts is with us. And at the end of the song, none of us are left in suspense. The song ultimately ends and finds a resting place in verses 7 and 11. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. That is the whole point of the entire psalm. And verse number 1 begins, God is our refuge and strength. Very present help in trouble. Our refuge, he's the one that we flee to for protection. He's our hope. He's our safety. God is our safety and hope. This was the psalmist's way of singing about the one who they discovered can they can trust when they're facing uncertain times, when they're facing difficulty. God is our refuge. He's our strength. He is the might that carries us through the difficult times. He is a very present help in trouble. Whatever catastrophe may strike, whatever chaos may ensue, true security is found in God alone, not in God plus anything else. That is the message of the psalm. And we have this imagery in verses 3 through 4. It's conjured up this figurative language, very dramatic and powerful. The mountains that normally appear to be unflinching and unwavering and unconquerable, they are quaking and it's set against the backdrop of this menacing, raging sea. And the psalmist begins to contemplate the end of the whole created scheme, right? This is the complete undoing of creation as they know it. The earth is shaken. The mountains are falling into the menacing sea. Creation is becoming uncreated. It said, even when and if this happens, we are not going to be overwhelmed with terror and fear. Even if all of creation becomes uncreated, though the earth is removed and the mountains carried into the midst of the sea, when the waters are troubled and the mountains are shaking, when there is unmitigated chaos and catastrophe, things that occur that are beyond the scope of human imagination, things which threaten our existence as we know it and have come to love it, we will not fear. That's the lead voice there. In this certain earthquake-prone regions, I read that they have buildings that are created with things called flex points. And this is so that a building will sway rather than collapse. A rigid building breaks, a flexible one stands. The architect designs it this way so that when the shaking happens, the building doesn't collapse. I remember when I was teaching my son how to drive, he was very nervous and he would white knuckle that steering wheel and he would be so rigid. I'd say, Bub, you've got to relax. You've got to loosen up a little bit so that you can respond appropriately when and if a deer jumps out or a car swerves into your lane. You can't be so tense and so rigid that you don't have the flexibility to move with things that are coming at you. These flex points. Trials are not evidence that God is functioning as an absentee landlord. Trials are opportunities. Maybe I can encourage you to build some spiritual flex points. I know for me, I had to build some spiritual flex points in my own life. I used to be very, very rigid, thinking that doctrine alone and dogma alone would carry me through difficult times, and it was all about what you believed and what you held on to. And what I found over the years, especially as you advance and you do a little bit of higher level academic work, is there's not a single doctrine that couldn't be undone with a little bit of careful study in context and manipulation of the language. Interpretation is an art as much as it is a science. So I had to learn to loosen my grip on certainty in a world that is filled with uncertainty and mystery, and let go of the rigidness of dogma and the rigidness of religion and the rigidness of an identity, so that when the shaking comes, I sway rather than collapse. And I've collapsed, and it's no fun. It's the worst mental pain I've ever been in my life. I don't recommend it. Folks, God never promised a life without shaking. What this psalm does is it gives us a bit of a blueprint of where to go when it happens. It's like this lead soprano voice is telling us to look beyond the chaos, look beyond the shaking, because there is a river. The streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. And this is leading us right into the main point of the entire psalm in verses 7 and 11. This is the psalmist's way of singing about the reality that no matter what takes place in the world, there is a source of life that gently flows from God. A river of life, a river of living water flowing from the throne of God to his people, and it sustains them during extreme moments of distress. Some towns, I read, are fed by streams that come from glaciers that are miles away. Even during a drought, the waters continue to flow steadily. Why? Because it's coming from a source that's higher than the crisis. God's joy, God's peace, God's strength doesn't come from surface level circumstances. It comes from a deeper, higher, eternal source. So is your joy, is your peace, that state of easiness, is it coming from a reservoir that ultimately runs dry, or from this river that never stops flowing? It's a relationship. We read in the latter half of verse number 5 that God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when the morning dawns. It's often, at least in my experience, and I'm sure others, that the most terrifying moments happen when everything is dark. At nighttime, I remember when we were coming home last spring from the Lake of the Ozarks, and we had these horrible storms, and we had to rush down into the basement in the middle of the night. Our sirens were going off and all kinds of things, and it was a little bit scary. We were sending messages to the kids, letting them know, well, we hope to see you guys again. We love you. Everybody's already tired, right? You were in a dead sleep and the sirens are going off. You're not seeing things clearly, but when the sun rises, when the sun comes up in the morning, the fatigue lifts, clarity comes. Daybreak feels a lot like hope. And that's what Psalm 46 verse 5b is telling us. God will help when the morning breaks. God shall help her in that right early. God is often at work before the sun rises in the morning. And just as the story of Genesis 1 teaches us, God does some of his best work with the deep darkness of life. Verse 7, creation has suffered this upheaval, and now the nations are raging, the kingdoms are tottering. But when God speaks, the raging of the rebellious is stilled forever. He breaks the bows and splinters the spear, and he commands the turbulent, raging world and nations to be still and know that he is God. I will be exalted on the earth. God rises above the chaos and the troubles of the world, and he brings peace. All of us, I'm sure, know what it feels like when life shakes us, when the ground under us begins to move a bit, and when all the systems and structures that we trusted in begin to crack. And that's where Psalm 46 meets us. It meets us right there. It doesn't ask us to pretend that chaos and catastrophe doesn't exist and it's not real. It doesn't invite us to blame God for the disorder or imagine that God is distant from it. Instead, Psalm 46 shows us that the very God who tamed the waters in Genesis, the God who brought order out of the void in the deep darkness of Genesis, is the same God who stands with his people when the waters are threatening again. Psalm 46 is language of steady hearts in an unsteady time. And the theology of Psalm 46 is shaped very much by the theology of Genesis chapter 1. God does not avoid chaos, he confronts it, and he brings order out of it. In fact, that was the first act in Genesis, wasn't it? God confronts the formlessness, the deep darkness, the deep waters, and he turns chaos into cosmos. He transforms the chaos into cosmos. In Israel's imagination, whenever chaos arose, God's role wasn't questioned. God's nature was to bring order out of the chaos. We've all flown in an airplane, I'm sure, and maybe have experienced some turbulence at times. A commercial airline pilot was once described the unnerving experience of flying through extreme turbulence. The cabin drops, the lights are flickering, the passengers are in a panic. Inside the cockpit there, every single warning system is blaring at once. There's visual alarms, there's audio alarms, there's vibrating controls, and everything in the sensory world of the pilot is going crazy, right? It's like being uncreated. But the pilot says something. He says, the airplane feels out of control to everybody on it, but it's still governed by the same aerodynamics. The laws that hold it up haven't changed. And the point here is that even when everything in life feels like it's disintegrating, God's nature has not changed. God is still operating by the same character, the same promises, and the same power. When the waters roar, God is our refuge. When the mountains fall, God is our strength. When chaos tries to reclaim the world, God's identity has not changed and it has not bent. God's identity is the one who brings order out of chaos, not the one who never lets it happen. The message of Psalm 46 is not that chaos disappears, but chaos bows. God does not promise a world without storms. Jesus even said, in the world you're going to have tribulation. God reveals himself as the one whom we can have refuge in when those storms happen. Same God who subdued the primordial waters and spoke creation into being is the same God who utters a word in Psalm 46 and the earth melts. The invitation is for us not to escape all of the instability of the world, but to rest in the one who's unshakable and to be still and know that he is God.